More on the Rohingya crisis with Azim Ibrahim in Chicago. He's director of the Center for Global Policy. Director Ibrahim, welcome to our show. I want to ask you about the current situation. In your opinion, what is a way out? Because the Rohingya refugees wouldn't go home, most of them, yet their host country, Bangladesh, say it can barely accommodate any more of them any longer.
Yeah, well, Bangladesh is hosting 1.2 million Rohingya refugees. This is the largest refugee camp in the world. And as you can appreciate, the Bangladeshi government is not too keen on taking any more or hosting them any longer. They do not see this as their responsibility. The reason why the Rohingya have refused to go back on this occasion is that because of the dialogue between Myanmar, Bangladesh and the United Nations excluded the Rohingya completely. They were not involved in any discussions on repatriation. And the Rohingya demands are very simple. They simply want to go back to their own country. They want to have full citizenship and they want to have security. None of these things have been guaranteed by Myanmar, and so they refuse to go back. It is really that simple.
So let me ask you this. To our international viewers who are not terribly familiar with the situation in Myanmar, can you tell them why wouldn't the Burmese government grant these Rohingya citizenship?
Well, Myanmar, Burma does not recognize the Rohingya as citizens. It stripped them all of their nationality in 1982 by a law, the National Citizenship Act, in which they rendered all the Rohingya minorities as stateless. They became one of the largest stateless groups in the world. And since that time, they have been trying to rid the Rohingya from their country. This has followed wave after wave of violence and ethnic cleansing and genocide against the Rohingya until it culminated in 2017, in which they expelled over 700,000 Rohingya from their country. And we must remember, it is not just the Rohingya that are targets of the Myanmar military. Almost every other ethnic minority is also being targeted, including the Karen, the Shin and the Shan. Other minority groups are all equally being targeted. Many in the military are interested and motivated in creating a Burma Buddhist nationalist state. They do not believe that these minorities belong in their country.
So in your opinion, what could be the steps to a durable solution? You said that the Rohingyas were not represented in UN-mediated talks.
I think the steps are very clear. I think the pressure has to be applied to Myanmar to take these refugees back, offer them full citizenship, and give them the security and give their lands back as is necessitated by international law. And I believe China plays a very important role here. China is the regional power. It is an aspiring global superpower, and it's facing multiple problems, not just in Hong Kong or Xinjiang or elsewhere. I think this situation in Myanmar is an easy win for China to put pressure on Myanmar to solve the situation. And I think this will demonstrate China as being a responsible global power if it can solve this situation, which I believe is relatively easy for it to do.
But you know, China has this non-interference policy all the way since the 1970s, when Premier Zhou Enlai of China back then said China would not interfere easily unless absolutely necessary. But on the other hand, what do you think Bangladesh can do? Because there are reports of poor living conditions over there in the refugee camps, even cases of violence.
The conditions are very poor. You know, I have been to the refugee camps myself many times, and as you can appreciate, 1.2 million people living in squalid conditions, it makes it very difficult. You know, so this situation is not sustainable. I believe that they have to come to some sort of solution, you know, with the United Nations, with the Rohingya, and as I indicated, with China as well. China has to play an important role in this. And I appreciate that China has a non-interference policy, but as an aspiring global power, China has to take responsibility in this situation and show some leadership.
So much is at stake. Thank you so much, Director Azim Ibrahim in Chicago, for your insight.